Welcome to Dr. M Health Corner Talk Show. Welcome. I am Dr. Unati, your host. Thank you so much for joining us. I just want to apologize. I don't know what happened to my camera here. So as you can see, my face is kind of blurred a little bit, but you know what? We're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
What's important is the content, right, Budumi?
Yeah. Hello, Doc. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. I
Yes.
see people are coming on. Thank you. Thank you for joining. I just want to give a
Mhm.
background of our show here. We come here every Saturday and we basically come at 7 p.m. South African time. 11 a.m. time has changed in this side of the world. I'm on MST. And of course, it is 11 a.m. and 13 hours at the in the east side here. So the last few times, I actually emphasized parents to just bring maybe 18-year-old kids, but you know what? It's gonna be safe to bring your 13-year-olds because I think it's important for our kids to understand mental health. So it's okay to watch with your kids. And again, I apologize for the quality of my video. For some reason, my camera decided not to work for me today. Thank you so much for joining us, Budumi. I have a special
Thank
guest for
you.
you guys today. This is going to be a very raw, intimate talk with my dear friend here. He's going to share his journey. As you can see on our screen, we're talking about bipolar disorder. He lives with bipolar mood disorder. And of course, I like to emphasize this: having a mental health illness doesn't necessarily cancel you in this world. As you can see, he's a professional, he's a specialist advisor in the Department of Intellectual Property and Protection for Trade and Industry in South Africa. So as you can see, he's functioning well because there tends to be that stigma attached to bipolar specifically. For some reason, people who are living with just depression, they they don't have that much stigma, but when people have bipolar, people look at them differently. Welcome, Budimi. You're gonna share your journey here shortly.
Yes, ma'am.
How is it?
Okay. Can I go? Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Is 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 the floor mine now?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
I just want you to share your journey. And
Yes.
before you do that, I want to give a quick intro to our viewers here. Bipolar disorder
Ye-
is basically two poles of depression and mania. Budumi is gonna share with you what that means. And as he goes along, I'm gonna add few things so that you can leave this space equipped to understand your family, your friends, your colleagues who have this mental illness. Okay? Go ahead, Budumi. Your stage is yours.
Thank you, Doc. Oh, for the benefit of those who don't know me, I'm Dumisa. I'm from a village in the Eastern Cape called Ngaleni. I was born and bred there. Uh, Firstly, I would like to thank you, Doc, for providing me with an opportunity to come to the show and actually share my own experience regarding this mental condition. Bipolar mood disorder, as far as I was told, occurs when there's a chemical imbalance in your brain. So, what happened is that I was not aware throughout my teen years that I had this condition, and a proper diagnosis was made uh, in 2005.
Okay.
Prior to that, I was not aware what was happening to me, but I had these episodes, which are actually symptoms of bipolar.
Okay.
It all started during my years at tertiary, where I studied at the University of Transkei. It was during mid 80s to late 80s where I would actually behave in an irrational manner. And what would happen is that my parents, not knowing what was happening to me, would take me to traditional healers, and I would undergo all those things that because they thought that I was being bewitched. So I would be doing all those traditional things like ukufuta, ukugapa, ukucima. And I would like to share this story because so many people think that people who are having bipolar are actually mad. And it was such a tragic experience at times, but not all times, when I would visit these traditional healers, because not all of them treated us in a human manner. But be that as it may, I would come back and perform. In fact, I performed well at school. I did pass my degree. But this persisted over a period. And when I was finally diagnosed as being bipolar mood disorder patient, it occurred to me when I was being interviewed that my father had similar symptoms. But during those years, I don't think it was known that it was bipolar, because our uncles would come to us and tell us that our father una nerves. I don't know whether I make sense, because I don't understand even now why they said una nerves. But he would behave irrationally and would be locked inside the house, and we would be told that una nerves masingamphazamisi, meaning that we must not bother him. When now I was told that bipolar can be passed on genetically, I discovered that my father had bipolar. And the diagnosis that was performed on me, and it was discovered that I have bipolar mood disorder too. Okay. Because there are two types of bipolar according to the medical terms. There's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. So with me, when I was still at school, I would actually show symptoms of hypomania. And I would be very, very happy, sociable, and talk a lot. And the sad part of it is that when you are in a hyperactive stage, which is hypomania, you tend not to sleep. You tend to think that you are the best. And you drink a lot. I used to drink a lot. Most people don't know that I used to drink a lot, and people would actually be concerned about that. But I wouldn't know that I was suffering from something. In fact, I don't want to use this term of suffering from bipolar. What I like is I'm living with the condition. That's how I tell my colleagues and friends. So these two types of symptoms, which is hypomania, and the others is a depressive episode, which is very, very dangerous, because when you are in a depressive mode, you start feeling helpless and hopeless. You start feeling anxiety. You get agitated. You get angry very easily. Something that would not bother another person would bother you to such an extent that you would actually consider it as someone attacking you if he or she is doing a joke on you. So that one, when it is in the West, in its worst form now, you become suicidal. That's why it's very important for people to know that people who are suicidal or who talk about suicide should not be treated as if they seek attention. It's something that comes from inside. You don't want to live because you have got this thing that in fact you think that there's nobody that likes you. This is the end of the world. And most people do carry out suicide in that process. Fortunately for me, I'm still alive and I can talk about that. So when I was, I passed my degree and I worked at the Department of Justice in Umtata. The second year after I had started working, the symptoms came back again. I still remember vividly now that I was in a depressive mode. I would actually lock myself and not go to work. And my boss was so concerned, and my parents were informed about the situation, and they came back because they were not staying where I stayed. My father was in Joburg and my mother was in KwaZulu-Natal. They would come back and take me to these traditional healers and also abathandazeli, because they were not aware about what is it that was going through me. I survived all that, and then I came to Pretoria to start working here in Pretoria. That's when I went to a hospital called Louis Pasha Hospital when I had one of these episodes. My cousin took me to Louis Pasha hospitals where all the tests were conducted on me. And it was then discovered that I am living with a condition called bipolar mood disorder. And I was told in no uncertain terms that this condition is going to be with me for the rest of my life. But I was actually told that much as it is not curable, it is manageable.
Yes.
That's why I managed to have a fulfilling life. I'm working at the Department of Trade and Industry now as a specialist advisor on intellectual property. And I'm living a fruitful life. There are times that I usually get these symptoms. And it is upon me now, since I understand that I'm living with this condition, to act on it. First of all, I admitted that I have this condition, which is the first step. And it's a major step if you admit that you have a condition,
Yes.
so that you can take steps to actually manage it. So there is treatment that I take, which is a chronic treatment. I take tablets every day. Every day. But let me tell you this, it's tiring. At first it was tiring. As a result, when I feel better, I would stop taking them. And after a few months, I would go back to the depressive mood and I would have to be admitted. And my doctor usually advised me to say, please don't stop unless we are advised to do so by the doctor. So these days I do take medication regularly. So there's treatment, and then there's a psychological assessment and analysis. I usually go to my psychiatrist for sessions, and we would talk over things that trouble me, and she would advise me on how to handle those things. And based on our interaction, she would adjust now the dose of my medication. Another important part that I discovered at a later stage is the power of prayer. I'm a member of the Methodist Church of Southern Africa and a member of Young Men's Guild, which is Amadodan. So that actually helps me a lot, because most of the time, in fact, on Saturdays, we usually meet as Amadodana and engage in spiritual activities. And it actually helps one to actually say that there is God up there who knows everything, who sustains us. So prayer is very, very important. I pray a lot. I have a supportive I lost my brother in 2008, and I lost my sister in 2020. The only surviving child at home. But I do get support from my relatives. I've got people who are actually supporting me throughout my journey with this condition.
Wow. But Dumi, where do we start? You know what? You
Mm.
summarized what I was gonna share here, and I just want to honor you and uh, praise God for you for sustaining you. Because when we met on Facebook, you're such an amazing person, by the way. You are one of those motivating
Yes.
people on Facebook, and you live your truth, which is so rare when it comes to a black man. Because for the longest time, even as a black community, mental health is something we never talked about. And you mentioned a lot of things, so many pointers I'm going to actually comment on. First things, your family, they took you to traditional healers, which is part of our culture as Africans, right? So they did what they knew best. And I want to
Yes.
emphasize here, a lot of times healthcare professionals, they tend to judge this element. And how do we help our patients is to understand where they come from. When we understand people, we basically understand their cultures, their practices. That's when you're going to make sense to them and to bring them to their understanding of their conditions. So to be honest, it's a very common occurrence practicing in South Africa. That's what I saw lots. People used to come to the doctors late because most families, that's what they knew best, right? And obviously, in your case, it
Yes.
didn't get better, or it tried to help you, cope with life. Just to give a background of bipolar for our viewers, basically, as you heard him, he said it started when he was in his varsity years. That time is around when you are probably, just when you just got off your teenage years. Usually, literature tells us it's around 25. Obviously, some people they would show symptoms earlier than that, but usually the magic number is 25. People are around 25, and triggers like stress. He mentioned stress here, loss of a relative, maybe failing relationship, or loss of a job. Anything that could cause emotional pain could trigger, and actually it could be the very first episode of actually experiencing mania or depressive episode. All right. And of course, Budumi
Yes.
mentioned two types. Of course, there's another third one, Budumi. Most people don't necessarily have it. Very few people would have cyclothymia. But the type 1 bipolar disorder is when there's more manic symptoms, where a person is overly happy. He mentioned that he would be happier than other people. He feels great. He's not sleeping. Some people or family members could miss that. And usually they work a lot when people are in that manic state, but you can tell that there's some extreme in the behavior. And he mentioned he was drinking a lot. This is the time that you need your family members, your friends, people that care and love you, because they will see there's a shift now in your behavior because it affects you occupationally. You don't show up at work, or you do show up at work, you believe you are the CEO of the company. That's when people are in that ill state, right? So this is the time that I would like people who are watching us, if you're in an organization, you are in power, I would like you to have EAP programs for your staff, employee assistance programs, because this is fundamental for your staff. People who live with these conditions, they are the same as people who live with diabetes, with HIV, with hypertension, with heart diseases. These people, they need to have their maintenance medication. Same applies to bipolar disorders. So we need not to judge people or attach stigma. I remember actually, to me, you mentioned something one time we attended a webinar where there was a doctor there and a lawyer and yourself. Three things that took from you. There was a stigma, which is disappointing. These are all professionals, right, viewers?
Mm.
These are all professionals. These people were judged by their co-workers, by their workplaces. We need to stop that, because if we don't educate ourselves with these conditions, until unfortunately it happens to your family member, maybe you might understand. And it doesn't have to happen that way. So that's why I'm emphasizing any organization here, you need to put in place EAP programs so that if there's any shift or things to be in place, most especially this COVID time, we're seeing more people with episodes of mania and depression because of the stress. The pandemic affected all of us. People lost jobs. People lost relationships with their children, with their spouses. There's so much. There's deaths. He mentioned stress was a big trigger for him. He also mentioned family history. His father had nerves. Actually, Budumi, nerves, for some reason, it's also used here in this side of the world. Western people, they also mention that they
Mm.
have nerves for some reason. I think it's a global terminology,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
there's a family history there. All right. So his
Mm.
father had bipolar disorder, and he had it too, Ubudumi. So there's a
Yes.
strong family history there, right? So
Mm.
the
Yes.
notion, and I know that his parents, they took him to the traditional healers. Now let's talk about that. Again, there's dysregulation of chemicals in your brain. That's basically what the studies have been telling us. And at that point, you definitely need medication, which, as practicing allopathic medicine, yes, there's medications, more especially for the bipolar conditions. There's a strong medication. One of them is lithium. There's other drugs, but it's a magic pill. That one. You just need to monitor your thyroid. You need to have a good relationship with your doctor that will monitor all these things. And I want to emphasize the piece he mentioned. He used to stop his medications when he felt well. Don't we all see this even with people who have HIV, people who have diabetes, people they feel that dog, I felt I was great. Why would I continue taking medication? I loved it when you mentioned that would do it because we tend to judge people when they stop their medication. It's tiring. It's tiring to take pills. People tell us all the time. This is not only in bipolar disorders, it happens in all chronic conditions. It tires people to take pills every day. So we need not to look at them differently or judge them when these patients refuse to take medications. And again, when they're feeling well, it's the same thing. When other people with diabetes, when they feel their blood sugar is controlled, they stop. They tell us all the time, right? So tell me, Budumi, how has it affected your relationships? On that webinar, there's something you guys mentioned, three of you.
Yeah.
You mentioned that in the process, there's loss of relationships. How has it
Yes.
affected your relationships, family wise and
Yeah.
friends, colleagues? Tell me more about that.
Yes. 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 I'll start with family. When first it was detected that I have a problem, by that time it was not known what is it that I was having. So I used to quarrel a lot with my younger sister who had just passed on in 2020 because she believed that I was being angry. And for instance, we would argue about something and I would shout at her and I would actually want to hit her. So even my own mother, we used to quarrel because I wouldn't listen to her. By that time, I had not had this privilege of being diagnosed with the condition bipolar. So I was treated like uphambene, uyagula. So I would say that this condition actually affects a relationship within the family structure. But my elder brother, who unfortunately passed on in 2008, was more understanding than the other family members. He used to actually understand where I come from. But even then, he didn't know what was it that was going through in me. But he was more understanding than the other family members. Coming to romantic relationships, that one is very, very difficult even now because what happens is that when you get into a relationship with someone having this condition, I actually made a conscious decision that I would tell that person that I'm living with this condition. So that if she wants to have a relationship with me, regardless of the condition, then it's fine with her. But most during the course of the relationship would actually judge me. And they would hear a story from a person that had a relationship with me prior, and a person would come back to me and said, zandiyazi kanti uba uyaphambana. You understand? And it actually hurts you to hear that coming from the person who's supposed to protect you. So relationship wise, in terms of romantic relationships, it's very difficult to have a steady relationship with someone who would not understand the condition that you are living with. And also friends. Some of the friends I used to have actually left me And you would actually hear in the corridors that so-and-so said, hey, uDumi uyaphambana uhlobana njani naye, meaning how can you be friends with someone who's mad? There's this stigma that is attached to this condition, and I've developed a thick skin. If someone doesn't want to have a cordial relationship with me, whether being a friend or girlfriend, then it's fine. I was brought alone in this earth, so I can live alone. I'm happily single. I was never married. I don't say I will never marry, but if I cannot get someone who would understand the condition and protect me, then I would rather stay single. Because really, really, it's tough to deal with people who are not understanding and who would actually, when you first met this person and you tell her about the condition, the person would say, oh, no, I understand, I'll be with you right away. But immediately there are mood shifts, because there would be mood shifts. That's why it's called bipolar mood disorder. There would be mood shifts. But if a person would not understand that this is caused by the condition that you are living with, and then would start telling you that, no, I cannot stand this madness. I cannot stand you when you are like this. Let's rather break up. Then it's fine. So it has affected a lot in terms of the relationships.
Wow. You know what? But to me, again, it's interesting. What a difference. What a difference. I live in Canada. Many of my patients, they have stable relationships. People who come from all walks of life. I'm talking professionals like yourself. I'm talking people who are not necessarily educated. They have found love. You know what I mean? So it just simply means we have a national issue. It's not only just the people. Then we need, this is a challenge basically to the country itself or to our continent, because Africans have not understood mental health. And I think somehow, I always say, the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has actually helped all of us, because it affected us all equally, to have some compassion and understanding. Because truly, if in this side of the world people understand people who have bipolar and live with them, I have friends who have bipolar, never judge. I mean, even from South Africa, I never judged people who have it. So then there's a problem in our country itself. This is actually not just a friend issue. This is a problem that we need to solve as a country, because this is lack of awareness, first of all. I always say the excitement South Africa had when HIV 1981 came out, I want to see the same excitement to the decision makers, to the policy makers, to do it for mental health. I challenge people who are watching us. If you are in a decision-making, position, make that shift in your organization, right? I'm so proud of one of my friends who wrote a book. He works for Nedbank in their corporate space, in their executive level. They are making a shift with Dumi, and I would like to see that at your department, the trade and industry. I want to see that, because unfortunately, we're gonna continue living in these circles, people judging and not understanding this. And that's why actually this takes me to another issue. That's why even today in South Africa, parents, I mean, doctors are struggling to put children on medication, like for instance, for ADHD, because a lot of parents are in denial. They do not want to hear these diagnoses, because it's all mental health, and people, they feel they don't want to be judged, or they feel like they have not done their parenting well, or they feel that their child will be isolated or stigmatized. But here's the problem: your child gets even more lonely when he's hyperactive, not listening. Even the teachers today, teachers are very impatient, not to say all of them, but unfortunately, even the Department of Education is not providing them with the help they need with teacher assistants. So your child, imagine your child. I always tell the parents, imagine your child when he is very hyperactive or she is hyperactive and disruptive in class. Unfortunately, he'll always be picked on by the very same teacher you send him every day to. He'll be picked on by the other kids. They'll bully him. What happens to the self-esteem? It goes down. Depression
Exactly.
kicks in, right? So these are the things that if people could understand the bigger picture, bipolar disorder has nothing to do with stupidity. You just saw Dumisa here is a professional. He's thriving in his profession because his brain is working well. He has good judgment. He's intelligent to hold a job. So honestly, Budi, I honestly challenge our country for in order for people to start understanding this condition, we need to come from a policy level, from our national
Yes.
level, right? And if you are watching us here, just for you to understand bipolar disorder, many people, I have doctor friends, lawyer friends, people I know of who are doing really well because they are taking their medication. They have moments of not wanting to take their medication, like Dumisa, but you know what? The gift they have is the family and friends and spouses or partners that care about them. Thank you so much for providing that, because I mentioned that because I saw on the webinar I attended with you, the three of you, one lady there, fortunately, she has a very supportive spouse, but she mentioned many friendships were broken down.
Yes.
That's so sad, right? That's so sad.
Mm.
And just
Mm.
how has it been for you in the workplace? I would like to hear in the workplace, because
Yes.
some people, they're
Yes.
scared to share their diagnosis in the workplace. They're scared not to get promotions. They are scared when they are at the
Yes.
hospital. You know, there's judgment from the CEOs. How has it been like for you?
Yes. Uh, First of all, when you are diagnosed, the doctor tells you that you have a choice. You can disclose it to someone who's your manager at work, but that person should not disclose it. So what happened is that when I came back from hospital after my diagnosis, because I had stayed from work for about 3 months, because after my diagnosis, I was hospitalized because I was in a state of severe depression. So when I came back, I disclosed it to my then manager. But unfortunately, that manager was not supportive. In fact, she she she, she was the one who made me to think twice now about disclosing it. But I told myself, no, I can't be dictated to by her. Because what happens is that I used to apply for senior position within the department. And when she saw that I have applied for another position, she would call me into the office and say that, do you think you'll manage it to be in that position? And I would say, why do you ask that? I said, but you have disclosed that you have got this condition. So I used to get irritated by that. And we started not we started to drift apart until she was removed from being my supervisor. But be that as it may, other colleagues, I told other colleagues who were close to me, and they became supportive, and I didn't have any problem regarding that. So at work, you would see that other people, they would talk about this thing, because what I find it interesting is that if a person behaves in a certain manner, you'd find people in the corridors saying, you know, bipolar, no. People who actually don't know what bipolar means or bipolar entails would actually say, you know, bipolar, if somebody behaves strange. And that to me is something that is unacceptable, because they think that people with bipolar should behave strangely. And they think that bipolar is something that should be frowned upon. So I made a conscious decision to say that I would be engaged in creating awareness and education regarding the topic. That's why on Facebook, I usually write something on bipolar and other related conditions.
You've been doing an
And
amazing.
fortunately, there are people whom I've talked to who will be assisting me, because I'm writing something like a journal, which ultimately will become a book. And I've got Umfunsu Ngaba, who used to be our reverend in our circuit, but he has moved to Tembisa now. Uh, no, he has moved to Springs. Yeah, Guatemala Springs. So we have a common understanding of the issue, and he's helping me in this packaging of this journal, because I write my own story, living with bipolar, my life's history, which is my journey with the condition, and I'm not ashamed about it. I tell people that I'm not ashamed. And there are people who discourage me from talking about this. Said, why don't you tell everybody about your condition? I say, it's none of your business. It's my condition. It's the condition that I live with. I'm not suffering from it. I'm living with it. That's why I'm living a fruitful life. I have people who care about me. I have a mother who loves me dearly, Umatei. And I was praying for the day that my mother understands the condition, because she did not understand it. Even when I told her the first time, she insisted that, Mtanam, zinto zabantu is, Mama, no, I've been diagnosed with this condition. So it's not into zabantu, it's something that should be treated medically. So now she supports me 100%.
You know
So
what? I love this,
at
Putu.
work now, I mm.
You know what? I love it because the understanding once
So I made a conscious, yes. Mm,
go ahead.
mm. So what I was saying is that a decision I made consciously that I would engage in this mission of creating awareness and education on this condition. Some people will be helped, and some people will frown upon that. Then it's none of my business if people don't like it, because I'm not stepping on anybody's toe, because I'm talking about the condition I'm living with, not the condition that someone else. I'm a living testimony, because some of the people committed suicide because of depression caused by this condition. So I have not committed suicide. I'm still alive. God has given me strength to actually do everything that I can do, and also to actually be the voice of reason regarding the condition. That's what I
Thank
consider
you
myself
so
to be.
much. Thank you so much for what you're doing. It's beautiful, Putumi. It's beautiful on, and you know what? I love the fact that you have such a beautiful influence on your page. So people are getting the help. So many people here are commenting, this is your people, these are your people, this is your community. So that means a lot, because what it means is it's a ripple effect, the purpose of this show, it's exactly
Yes.
that. We need to start speaking about these situations, because for so long, more especially our people, Black people, they have associated mental illnesses to white thing. Many people, I remember
Yes.
working in South Africa, I've been gone for over 10 years. I don't remember having more than 10 patients with depression, for instance, Black patients specifically. It was only when I was doing locum work in the colleagues that are white colleagues practices, where I saw many of our South Africans, white South Africans. Here's the interesting thing, though. I saw depression lots with people with HIV. And
Yes.
I'm mentioning HIV because many people, they will judge people with bipolar mood disorder. But many people, they don't even know their status of HIV, but they judge.
Yes.
This is the interesting thing. People don't even know
Yes.
their status. And then you could start seeing them getting ill and ill, and then some of them die of HIV. So it all goes back to the understanding. I think our homework here, people, we need to start utilizing reading. Reading is the best gift we can ever do for ourselves, because when you start reading, you become empowered in the way you think, the way you speak, the way you communicate with people around you. And a lot of times, Budumi, I have been disappointed looking at people that I empower, like your supervisor. This is a person who was supposed to use his power to elevate you, but instead she saw a need to drag you down. I was mentioning specifically
Yes.
how it affects your work, because many people, they tell us they are not thriving or they're not going up the corporate ladder because of this condition. Many are judged. And yet other people with other chronic illnesses, they're going up the ladder. So again, it goes back to the awareness. What are the organizations doing about looking at disease prevention, looking at mental health awareness, all that stuff, because we can only change how we think, how we perceive information around us when we start learning about these things. When also these departments bring professionals to come and educate the communities,
Yes.
right? You know what? You talked about medication. I just want to mention to our viewers here. Putumi mentioned that it's a chronic medication, meaning that it's a lifelong. So he has to take this medication indefinitely. That's what we always say. And this is how honestly you manage your symptoms. Because the
Yes.
unfortunate thing, when a person with bipolar, when you are in that state of mania, I want to mention this. Many people have lost a lot of money. I don't know how it affected your finances, Budumi. Many people, they
Yes.
tend to buy a lot when they are in that
Yes.
state. They give money a lot. I actually had a patient in Fort England where she booked cruise. This is a woman who had money. They had money with her husband. So as a result, just to advise people here, and probably for you, Putumi, it's important to have that trustworthy person in case maybe your mother or your family member or your spouse
Mm,
have maybe
mm,
a link like your credit card, your bank account, to have that link to that person, because that's how this lady, when she started booking people, she was buying people tickets to go on the cruise, right? Because people, when they have that manic episode, they are happy, overly happy. They want everyone around them to be happy. They buy everyone alcohol. And sometimes they actually engage in dangerous behaviors. We had seen people actually contracting HIV. I had few patients put to me in South Africa who contracted HIV when they were in their ill state, right?
yes. Yes.
So it's something that really you need someone who's going to care and be genuine with you, to love you, to make sure that you take your medications, because it tends to have that dangerous aspect. You also mentioned
Yes.
the
Yes.
pole when you are depressed, where suicide is very common. Suicide is very
Yes.
common because when you are in that deep, dark corner, you need someone who's going to pull you
Yes.
out of that, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
need someone who's going to
Mm,
pull you out of that. So, as our viewers are watching us, I
mm,
want you to see the bigger picture of bipolar. It has nothing to do with the intelligence. He's an intelligent man. You can see that. Some of you work with him. That has proven. He passed his degree. He continues to do the work. He's writing a book. So it has nothing to do with intelligence. All it has to do is educating yourself. It's your homework to
yes.
educate yourself.
Yes.
Right now, we are so excited to be very black. We are so excited about people understand racism. I would like the same commitment. Be excited to learn about mental health, right? Because to be honest, each family has a member suffering with either depression or bipolar, schizophrenia, psychosis. There's so many of these conditions, but a lot of times there's denial in the family members who can make decisions for these people when they are in their ill state. So the excitement we have right now, Budumi, there's so much. Many people, they actually just gotten to understand that they are black. They are fighting racism. I
Yes.
want the same
Yes.
excitement.
Yes.
You've
Yes.
seen it
Yes.
on social media. Many people, they understand that they are black now. There's all these
Mm,
movements of black empowerment.
mm,
I want to see the same
mm, mm,
excitement in mental health.
mm, mm,
The
mm,
same
mm,
excitement, not
mm,
to hide your family member who suffers with these
mm.
symptoms. Instead, to take him or her for help. That's the society I would love to see. Right? But to me, it's beautiful. People are still watching. And I know that as a parent, it can also be hard on your
Yes.
children or on your child. I've seen a lot of broken
Yes.
relationships, and part of it is the
Yes.
society we live in. Some children, because they don't
Yes.
understand, that's why I said it's okay to have 13-year-olds to join us in this conversation, because
Yes.
some kids, they suffer from the stigma from other children, and those children, they hear from their
Yes.
parents. I always say kids, they hear something from an adult in their life. Or of course, there's TV, there's
Yes.
all that stuff. There's a lot of material kids can have
Mm,
hands on.
mm,
But I want people who are watching us here, this condition can affect the relationships with children, and it has caused so much drifting. And I pray that if there's such in your family or with you, Budumi, I pray that your child or your children to understand and maybe make time. And also, we also encourage family therapy. I'm not sure if Budumi, your
Yes.
family has gone for therapy to understand, because we take the time to educate the family too, the spouses, the children, to understand, because unfortunately you can't do that work all by yourself. So once they
Yes.
understand from the professionals, from the psychologists, they will understand the compassion that is required, the love and the kindness towards you. I'm just hoping your family is getting the help they need and require, because they need that to understand you.
Exactly. That's the battle that I've won. The battle where I encourage them to actually go for therapy. And then they refuse, and you cannot force them. For instance, my younger sister, who passed on last 2020, I used to encourage her to just go for counseling because of the many things, bad things that have happened in the family. So she remained resolute that Malume, she used to call me Malume. Malume, I don't have this condition now. Why should I go to see a therapist? That's the battle that we are fighting. But at the present moment, even my daughter, I encouraged my daughter to go to a therapist, and she's unwilling to do that. So on that front, I'm
We
still
pray,
losing, but
we pray,
I'll keep
Budumi,
on
we pray
trying.
that, yes, yes. And again, this is a
Yeah.
national
Mm,
crisis. This is a national
mm,
crisis that, if the
yeah.
same excitement and the same acceptance people have now towards HIV, I want to see that in mental health, because there's a
Mm,
big stigma. There's a big stigma. Like, let's talk about even how many families growing up in your village, Putumi, how many times you
mhm.
saw families taking out their child who has a disability out to play with you guys? Very, maybe zero. There's this shunning.
Zero. They are,
Our families, they don't
they
want to
actually,
play.
yeah, yes, they lock
There's
them
zero.
up.
Yeah.
You hardly see them playing with other
No.
kids.
And that's
There's
part
a
of
lot of stigma going
socialization.
around in our society.
Yeah.
Mm, mm,
I am so blessed to see another society, to see how they embrace their
mm,
children with autism, with other disabilities.
mm,
It's
mm,
beautiful,
mm,
because children, they need
mm,
stimulation from others. They need, when you
mm,
lock your
mm,
child in that room alone,
mm,
that makes the condition
mm.
worse, because each one of us, we are social
Exactly.
animals. We want
Mm,
to
mm.
communicate. We saw it with the pandemic, how frustrating it
Yes.
was not to see our friends, our colleagues,
Yes.
right?
Mm,
So I,
mm,
I would
mm,
like people to see this as a bigger picture, and
mm.
how much we need each other. We need each other. We
Exactly.
need each other to understand, because you deserve the love. You're a great man. You're a smart man. You deserve a woman who's going to love you. And I believe that you
Yes.
will find her at some point in your life. Don't lose the hope, okay?
For sure.
Yes.
Talking
It
about the
breaks my
pandemic,
heart. Yeah.
mm, mm. I was saying, talking about the pandemic, I would like to share a story that, you see, when the national state of disaster was proclaimed at the end of March here in South Africa, I actually got depressed to such an extent that I was hospitalized for 21 days.
I remember.
Fortunately, fortunately, what happens now is that I can feel when I'm getting to the state of depression. Unlike the previous time when I was hospitalized in 2008 for 4 months, where I just locked myself up, I switched on off my cell phone, I didn't open the door even when someone was knocking. I stayed without bathing, without brushing my teeth for 17 full days until my cousin found out that I was there. And then he actually begged with me to open the door, and then he took me to hospital. So I don't want to, I don't wish it to my worst enemy, because when you are in that state, you just become suicidal. You become hopeless, you become helpless. You, all you think is death. So when this state of national disaster was declared, or at the outbreak of COVID-19 here in South Africa. I think it was on the 27th of March, yes. So 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, I started feeling sad. I started having these anxious thoughts. Then I called my Reverend Ngcai. I said, Fundis, I think I'm degenerating into a state of depression. And he advised me to call my doctor. I called my doctor, who actually suggested that I should come and see her. And blood was taken from me and tests were done. And she just said, you are in a state of depression, I have to admit you. And I was admitted. So this conscious decision that I made to be engaged in creating awareness and education was precisely to alert other people when they find that they are developing these symptoms, they should actually check what is it that, because if you are a person who's sociable like me, who likes to go out and chat with people, immediately, if that thing stops and you want to be alone, you want to lock yourself, then there's something. Then seek medical help, especially if you don't even want to open the windows, because it starts there. You don't want to open the windows. You don't want to draw the curtains. You want to be alone. You don't want the light. For instance, during the severe state of depression that I was in 2008, for those 17 days, I did not switch the lights at all. It was dark, dark, dark. So most people thought that I was not there. So my neighbor actually was surprised when on the 17th day, I was taken by my cousin to hospital that, Aibo, there was a person all along here. You understand?
You know what?
So there are signs that now I just know that I'm getting into depression. And that helps me because I seek help immediately. Immediately.
Yes. You know what, Put?
So for this, yes.
Yes, go ahead, Put.
Oh, I was saying that for the 21 days that I spent in a psychiatric hospital, because there you are given an opportunity to be yourself. You are given medication every day, and they see to it that you take medication. You are actually called into the matron's office to take medication. You are not given in the ward and say, no, you can drink it anytime. No, you drink medication, you are well fed, you go to classes, there are therapeutic classes, you go to musical classes, dancing classes, everything. You just, they mold you so that you know that you are worth of being somebody, and you are being encouraged. I even laugh when I'm being discharged, because it was the third time I was admitted. So I had forgotten that when you are being discharged, you don't say that I hope to see you again, because they say no, we don't want to see you again here. So no. I usually forget, and they say no. Oh my, we don't want to, because I said, no, I hope to see you again, because that's how, when you leave people.
Yes.
Because they are nice people. You say, yeah. So I'm usually reminded that, no. With you, we don't want to see you again here.
Absolutely.
We can see you somewhere else.
Yes. You know what? I also want to emphasize on the symptoms you mentioned, the manic side is when really people, when they are overly excited, overly happy, and like I mentioned, the dangerous behaviors that and the wasted money. And also some people, what is it? They talk a lot. And actually, Budumi, there's also some people that have psychotic features. They start hearing voices, they start seeing, like, it can be very severe, right? You can have those symptoms. And this is when actually people have all these, dangerous behaviors they engage in. And that's why I'm saying the Ubuntu concept that we were brought up with, I wish I could see it, in our communities, because this is when you really need that to come into play. to have people that care for you, because really you shouldn't be missed even on day 3. People who work with you, people who care about you, it shouldn't get to day
mm,
17. You know, it breaks my heart to listen to your
yes,
story and seeing
yes,
that truly
yes,
when you live alone, you're just by yourself, it really
mm,
breaks my heart because it shouldn't be like that. We come from a culture where we,
yes.
yeah, the love
We
for each
look
other,
out for each other.
kindness. Yeah,
Mm,
we look out for
mm,
each other.
mm,
But why don't we want to
mm,
do
mm,
this for people living with mental conditions? I would like us to really improve on that. And of course, you mentioned something about the aggression, which is very common actually in men. Men
yes,
who are depressed, just in general, in depression, they tend to be angry, violent. And you mentioned substance abuse. Substance abuse, the alcohol, some people, they even experiment with other drugs, right?
yes.
Which even makes the
Mm,
condition
mm,
worse. Symptoms get worse.
mm,
That's why that therapy is very important for people to understand, to have that insight, to understand that these are the triggers for you, right? People, they understand that, okay, I cannot touch alcohol, I cannot touch cannabis, I cannot touch
exactly.
cocaine. These are the triggers for me, right? Even with stress management,
Mm,
that normalizing
mm, mm,
counseling, the
mm,
normalizing therapy. And hence, I
mm,
would love to see your parents, your mom and your daughter, to really engage in the therapy, because it will make them even understand and also heal from
yes.
also watching you, because
Mm,
a lot of times people, the loved ones also, they said some of them, they block it, like it never existed, what they experimented, or I mean what they experienced and
mm,
witnessed when you were in your ill state, right? And also I want to mention that,
yes, yes.
and then the other cycle that happens, Butum, I don't know if it happens to you, when you start hearing the stories of how you behaved, and then that takes people back to that depressive state, the embarrassment. How could I behave this
Mm,
way? Why would I
mm,
say stuff like that? I've seen
mm,
that too, when you are coming out of your depression.
mm,
So it's very important to have people who really genuinely love you, who will not judge this situation, who
mm,
will not judge these
mm,
states, and who will
yes.
reassure you, and also sticking to your
Mm,
therapy, right? Because it's very important, because when you
yes.
feel, all of us, we do get embarrassed with things we say, but I find
Mm,
my patients with bipolar, they tend to be hard on themselves when they have behaved in a manner that they can't
mm,
recall. Is that how I behaved? Is it what I said?
mm,
So that's very important, to have people
mm,
that really love and support you, and who are compassionate, and
mm,
the staff, like the co-workers, the education, because I tend to see organizations, they have this reactive response when there's an episode that happened, and then they will bring that person to come and say stuff about mental
mm,
health, and then that's it. It has to be an ongoing thing. If it has to be a quarterly, what is it, occasion, it
exactly.
has to be that. Many companies, they send their workers to for
Mm,
conferences. We need to normalize mental health conferences, and starting in schools, we need to start teaching children mental
yes.
health, right?
Mm,
I would love to see
mm,
that. And thank you
mm,
for emphasizing on the medication, because it's very important. That's the paramount part of this diagnosis: staying on your medication and staying um,
yes.
compliant. And I know that sometimes it's very hard, but and I'm so happy that you have that, that support around you, and people who can see. And you know what, to our viewers, if you see your friend or your family member, your spouse, your child being distant or behaving in a manner that is not usual, that's the indication that you need to take him or her to their doctors or to their hospitals. I know that a lot of people, they will inbox me and say, "Dog, where do I go?" You go to your hospital. Our hospitals, I mean, Budumi is fortunate, he's blessed, he has access to private hospitals.
Yes.
Even public hospitals in our countries, they
Mm,
have the full service of psychiatrists and psychologists, and of course the nurses that work in the department. So it's a very full program that would support you. And again, I cannot overemphasize this. Honestly, family therapy is very important, and spousal, therapy. Go with your partner, go and understand this. Like I said, these people, they hold jobs like all of us. They hold jobs and they continue to change lives. Actually, I need to talk to you about this intellectual property and protection, because I need to start something in South Africa.
yes.
So really, we do need to utilize you guys. and see you like we see everyone else. But to me, as we are closing, what word of wisdom do you wanna share here? And of course, people, I'm gonna you see his name
You, I
here.
can't
This
hear
is
you.
how he is on Facebook if you wanna be in touch with him. But please don't overwhelm him with your problems and asking for advice. He has his enough share. So what you can do is, if you are struggling, please just go to your hospital. You can follow his page just for you know, for learning about bipolar disorder. I lost him there, and I understand that South Africa tends to struggle with that sometimes. So just for you guys not to
I
overwhelm.
lost you there.
I know, right?
Hello,
I'm just
Doc.
warning. But to me, I'm warning people
I
not
lost.
to overwhelm you.
Mm.
Yes, not to overwhelm you and asking questions in terms of he has his enough load, right? I know that
Oh, okay.
compelled to ask all these questions. Just follow his page, but don't make him your doctor. He's not a doctor.
Yeah.
He's living with a condition. Just learn from his page, but you have your own responsibility to learn about it yourself and also contacting your doctor. He's not a physician to suddenly hold your own struggles. It can be very overwhelming because and very strenuous and very stressful. So I just want to protect you here, Putumi, because people sometimes they tend to say, "I'm gonna start inboxing him." That's so enough. His own personal load is enough for him. You can just learn on his page. But if you have a family member, a relative, your spouse, your child has these symptoms, just go see your doctor. Putumi, do you want to say something before we close? He's frozen. I guess we're gonna close. Thank you so much for our viewers. I see people who commented here. I'm gonna pull up. Um, you had actually amazing support here. Dolly said, "Thanks, Goddess." Uh, Nwabisa, my dear friend, a much needed conversation in our society. Absolutely. Nokwenza Luzipo says, talking about it actually is a step forward towards healing. Utito ulithemba lethu. God is our hope. Don't worry about those who still laugh and gossip when one is struggling with some form of stress or depression. Thank you so much, sis. And Nogolite says, to have a spouse or partner to avoid exploration in times of needing help, kind of things. Um, to have a partner, yes, we need someone to love us and accept who we are. Violet says family therapy is key because the mental health care user will feel that he's not alone. Thanks, Dr. M. Absolutely, sis. We need that support. And thank you so much for watching. Um, I'm pretty sure next week I'm gonna have my good quality image here. As you can see, I keep disappearing, but you know what? The voice is clear. For some reason, my camera decided not to work this morning, and I cannot thank enough Put Dumi for coming and sharing his story. It's a very rare occasion to see, more especially our black men sharing about their mental health. It takes such vulnerability and strength and also knowing who you are to be able to do that. So I applaud what he has done here. And I'm hoping it changed how you view mental health yourself, or basically it's also challenging you to learn more about it so that you don't find yourself judging. Because a lot of times, people who are ignorant about something, they tend to judge something they don't understand. They tend to be fearful of something they don't understand. But once we start embracing and also helping ourselves, educating ourselves, we are better in understanding. We can have better conversations with other people. We can also exercise compassion and love, right? So it also empowers you as a person to understand. So it's not only a gift for understanding your friend who's Dumisa, but it's also a gift for you to grow because you are not the same as yesterday when you educate yourself. So follow your page if you're on our page. If you don't follow our page, be part of our community. We're a family here. We meet here every Saturday at 7 p.m. South African time, 11 a.m. MST, 13 hours Eastern Standard Time. We meet here every week. I bring amazing speakers, people with lived experiences like Dumisa, and of course, other professionals to come and share their knowledge with us. I don't know how much knowledge I've acquired just by having these conversations with you. And I can't thank you enough for coming up with me here. I know you could be somewhere, but you choose to be here. Thank you so much for being here. And God bless. See you next week. I love you all. Take care.